What's up, whiskey fans, and welcome back to another video. Today we are with Louise from Corry. Louise, welcome, and thank you very much for giving us your time to this interview. Tell us a little bit more about your whiskey journey and what inspired this journey that you're on right now.
So I founded Corry a decade ago, and I would have been one of the first sort of new independent whiskey producers in this country in over 100 years. And I moved back to Ireland to found the business after 20 odd years abroad. I sort of landed on the brand Corry. It was a local brand, you know, from the 1800s, and the business model that Corry had was really interesting to me. It took the form of whiskey bonding. And that used to be extremely common in Ireland up until about the 1930s, and it had totally died out. So I very seriously considered setting up a grain-to-glass distillery here on the farm. That was kind of my first thinking. But then I realised that the Irish whiskey industry kind of had lost an entire part of its heritage when it lost Irish whiskey bonding. So I decided instead to source whiskey from all of the newer and older distilleries on the island, source casks from all over the world, match cask to spirit, and then mature to create our own house style.
Okay.
So it was really inspired by the history of Irish whiskey and, you know, how I wanted to contribute to the modern resurgence.
Okay. Now, on your website, you obviously depict the story of finding a 130-year-old bottle of whiskey or a label on a bottle.
Yes.
Can you just give us that? Because that is for me, that is a major part of whiskey history right there.
Yeah, it is. So when I came back here to kind of investigate, you know, how I was going to go about setting up this whiskey company, I started to research the local history of whiskey. So in this county, there would have been about 7 distilleries at one time or another from the 1700s up until the late 1800s. And as part of that research, I found these whiskey labels, these Corry whiskey labels being sold on the internet. And I called the guy who was selling them. He was an antique dealer local to me, and I went to visit him and I got the story behind it. And it was literally the original Corry labels from the 1890s, essentially, that he had found when he was clearing out the Corry shop. And that is really what kind of started the journey, because on that label, it was Corry, whiskey bonder. I hadn't heard the term before in the context of Irish whiskey, so it sent me down a big rabbit hole of like historical investigation that ended up where we are today, basically. Okay. But it was a vital part of the story.
And do you still have those labels today?
I do, yeah. There's one of them over there. Yeah, there really is. Yeah, we still have them.
Now, for those of you, the viewers who don't know what a bonder is, can you just explain to us in simple terms what a whiskey bonder is?
Yeah, the easiest way to do that is to look at history, first of all. So back in the day, a whiskey bonder was a guy like Corry. He would have had a shop or a mercantile, and he would have sold everything from musical instruments, tea from India, sherry, wine, and whiskey, right? And in terms of his whiskey, what he would have done was he went to his local distillery or distilleries, picked up the spirit from there, and then matured it in the casks that he had kind of lying around his shop. So we know Corry sold Bordeaux from Medoc and Saint-Julien. We know he sold sherry. We know he sold dandelion wine and rum. Okay. So he would have been using those casks to sort of create his own unique house style, essentially. Whiskey bonders were very well known for blending tea. You know, when you received tea back in the day, you had to blend it all together. So they kind of got their blending chops from that. So they were very well known as blenders. So that was the OG kind of whiskey bonder.
Okay.
So I took that business model and I sort of brought it into the modern age. And now, I source whiskies from as many distilleries as I can across the island. But then I go out globally to source my casks.
Okay.
And I'll work very closely with individual bodegas, individual distilleries, individual wineries to seek down flavors from those particular spirits and wines that I can then match up with individual distilleries and distillates from around the island, basically. Okay. So it's a very simple business model. I'm sourcing, but it's extremely meticulous sourcing on the cask side, on the liquid side, and then it's blending.
All right. We were in the rack house earlier. You've got an incredible selection of casks. What influences your cask selection?
You know what, it's actually can be very personal, because if I go down a rabbit hole and get very into a particular genre of liquid, I'll start to seek that out. Okay. It also depends on the quality and the partnerships that I can sort of make, right? So the people that I work with on the distillery side are people that I really vibe with, who are doing really interesting things. And the same on the cask side. You know, if someone is producing a particularly interesting Amontillado or Fino or PX or whatever it is, I kind of want to build a relationship with them, you know, understand why and how they're doing it, and understand how that flavor is going to kind of translate.
Okay.
So it's a very organic process. It's not particularly scientific, but it involves a lot of like personal relationship building and a lot of flavor seeking.
Okay, so it's a lot more personal than just like science, basically.
Yeah, it's not massively commercial either necessarily. Okay. So sometimes we get it wrong, you know.
There's
a couple of disasters,
that, you know?
like
it's always a gamble.
Yeah.
Now, whiskey has always been a male-dominated. Well, it's got the stigma of being a male-dominated industry. You, as a female, how did you find the industry, and how did you break through that sort of stigma that everybody knows it to be?
Yeah, you just have to get on with it, would be my philosophy. You know, I think if you get bogged down in that kind of thinking, you won't get anywhere. So I was confident enough in my own capabilities. I'm also a very collaborative kind of a person, just as an individual, but also as JJ Corry. You know, we're not afraid to ask for help, you know, and we're not afraid to go out there and work with other kind of whiskey companies to make something even better. And that approach, can be a very feminine approach, I think, but that approach has got us kind of a long way. So I don't think about it too much, I just get on with it.
Okay. Can you give us some insights into your releases, what you have done, what's still to come, what can we expect from JJ Corry?
So we have three pretty standard kind of core range. We have a grain whiskey, we have a higher end blend that has a lot of older stocks in it, and a single malt that are we've kind of honed those in now, bearing in mind we've really only been in operation for just about a decade. So those three are the Hansen, the Gale, and the Flintlock. And those are kind of they're kind of starting to help us to build out kind of what our house style is really like. So we love doing those, but then on the side then as well, we do what is called Bonders editions. And this is very much influenced by the heritage of JJ Corry. So we make extremely small batch individual SKUs for customers every now and then. So you can come to us as a customer in South Africa, for example, and sit down and we will work with you to create a bespoke blend. It might only be 130, 150 bottles. It's going to be super small scale, pulling from the library of flavors that we have over here to create something that's one-off and very unique. And we love doing that with our customers because they get something that they feel really involved in, that they've blended themselves, and it's a real one-off. So there's two kind of strands to the business in that regard, and we love to do both of those.
Okay. Now for me, I find whiskey to be, it's an experience. Now, I told you earlier that when we had Whiskey Live in 2024, I tasted the Gale there. To this day, 9 months later, I'm still thinking about the Gale. Is that how you feel about whiskey as well? Does it take you on that journey? Do you feel those sort of emotions and everything like that when you taste your own product?
Very much so.
Okay.
All the time. And some of them are more special than others, just depending on, you know, who we were blending it with or where I was in my head at the time. The Gale will always be very special to me because it's the first whiskey that we ever made. And to your earlier question, you know, there was a lot of doubt about our capabilities as a business maybe in the first kind of, with our first release. And the Gale really kind of proved us, you know, to be a business that could do something really interesting with kind of sourced stocks, right? So the Gale for me it always brings back good memories, good moments, and it was the real beginning of the whole journey that we've been on. So yeah, I'm very partial to the Gale too.
No, like I said, it's absolutely fantastic whiskey. I absolutely love it. Now, a lot of people seem to think that because you're in whiskey, you drink every day. Do you have a daily sipper, and do you drink whiskey every day?
You know, I don't drink whiskey every day, and here's why. I have an unlimited supply of whiskey, right? So what I do is because I have people here every day, and people usually arrive at about 11 o'clock in the morning. So if I do that, I won't get any work done ever. So I kind of tend to ration myself. It's a side effect of the industry. I'll drink it when I'm working, when I'm blending, and then I'll drink it on the weekend. But I will try not to drink it in the evenings recreationally because it's a slippery slope. I think you have to be careful. But I drink more whiskey than most people. I'll tell you that much for nothing.
And do you have a favorite? Do you walk up to your whiskey shelf or whatever it is and go, oh, that's the one I'm going to...
I love the Flintlock and I love the Gale.
Okay.
And then we have a few kind of little tiny one-offs that we've done. I have a couple of casks out here, some of which you've tasted today, some of the 33-year-olds. That'll be my go-to, you know, if I'm feeling down any day.
I always find that whiskey is a very sort of emotional thing, because if you've had a bad day, you tend to go to something a little bit harder, a little bit something. When you have had a good day and you want a whiskey, you tend to go to something softer. So it has a very sort of emotional connection, I find. So that's the reason why I love whiskey so much. Not because of, well, also because of the history and the science behind it, but it does have that emotional connection.
It does, and it's worse if you're buying it by the barrel, right? That's when it becomes problematic, because I legitimately have a lot of barrels in here that I've been looking after in one way or another for a decade, right? Whether I might have bought them when they were 15, they're now 25. I might have bought them when they were 0 and then put them through different casks. And some of the casks you get very attached to because they're developing, they're just developing in a way and doing things in casks that are really interesting. So I'm running a business here, but there's some casks out there that I can't sell. I just don't want to sell because I am emotionally attached to them. So it's bad enough if you're buying it by the bottle, but by the cask, it's really problematic.
So my last question for the day, and I ask this to everybody that I interview. If you got stuck on a desert island and you could only drink one whiskey for the rest of the time that you're alive on that island, what would that whiskey be?
So I've answered this question a couple of times, and the one that I go back to, and again, this is an emotional piece. So I worked with a company called The Last Drop, who are a whiskey sort of spirit company out of Scotland, and I really, really admired them for a long time before I started JJ Corry, and I got the great kind of privilege to work with them to create a blend, essentially. And I got to work with Helen Mulholland, who was at one time the master blender up at Bushmills, for example. And we worked together to create this very small scale blend. And it was a lovely experience. I have great memories from it. It was a 32-year-old, which also helps because it was really delicious. But it'd be that, because for me, it was almost like the pinnacle of what we do here, to be working with somebody that I admire so much, to be pulling some of our most incredible stocks and putting that out into the world. That was really special. So it was The Last Drop JJ Corry, 32-year-old. That's what it would be. It was pretty good.
But Louise, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for hosting us in your home. It has been an absolute amazing tour today and experience, and I've loved every minute of it, and I hope to see more of you in South Africa.
Yes, I'm coming back for sure.
Yeah, but again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.